Hello, Sarah. Hi, Sarah. I can't hear you. Are you muted?
Hi.
Much better.
Yes. How are you today?
I'm good.
Good.
I'm curious to see how many people come back.
Oh, I hope everyone does.
Yes.
I thought last week was very meaningful.
I'm glad. So your FSEM sounds really interesting.
Yeah, I'm trying to learn from a lot of the mistakes I made a couple years ago. I think one of the biggest things I did was I really put too much pressure on myself and the students to get everything right.
Yeah, well, there's so many moving parts in an FSEM.
Yeah.
The best way I found is just try one thing at a time.
And that's what I'm going to try to do this year, and accept it when things don't go well, because there's times when things did not go well.
It happens.
Yeah. It was just such a new format for me. I've never done discussion-based classes before, so.
So it was a learning experience.
Sure was. So I'm excited to try it again. And I think all of this pre-planning will be very helpful.
Good. Then we're achieving our goal.
Indeed. All right. Did you have a lot of people turn in the assignment? Indeed. We have more in common with them than we think. Yeah. It's going okay. I've had some family issues going on, so trying to deal with that and trying to deal with all of this COVID stuff at the same time is quite challenging, especially since my family is over 400 miles away. Erie, Pennsylvania. Yeah, so it's difficult to figure out what the right thing to do is. Should I be going home, or should I be staying here? Right now, I'm staying here. We'll see what happens. But
hello. Oh no, is that good?
nice.
Okay, I will.
I'm here. Good morning, everybody.
I'm here. Hello.
Hi, Dave.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't had a haircut in like 3 months.
Same.
Less to worry about than most people do.
No, I'm losing it too. This crisis has probably accelerated that process.
Actually, on a walk yesterday, I realized that my barbershop is open now. So I might be tempted one of these days.
There you go.
I actually had a dream last night that I just started to go gray. Like the stress of all of this made me go prematurely gray.
Yeah,
And I
that's
actually
my
woke up
excuse.
this morning thinking, oh my gosh,
Hey, Anand.
it looks great though.
Yeah,
Anand,
that's not what caused me to go gray. It was having kids. And then it made it fall out.
The PhD
Jesse.
did it for me.
Oh, yeah, I'd do it.
oh, which reminds me.
Pam, you all set for tonight? You've got a big week.
Yes, I am all set for tonight mostly, just trying to practice and run through it as best as possible.
Excellent. And then you're giving the COVID talk next Monday too, right?
Yes.
You're participating in that? That's awesome.
Boy,
Looking forward to both.
I'd forgotten how much fun it is to be the junior faculty member. Hey, is your talk tonight being recorded?
It is, but I still think you have to register to get the link for the YouTube.
But I bet you could send it to me if I asked
I'll see if
nicely.
I can get you a pirated copy, Steve.
Yeah, the reason why I'm asking is that I have my synchronous class session tonight at the same time, so I won't be able to show. Otherwise, I would love to.
Yeah, I can get you the link.
So, all right, now where is that delinquent student of mine in my phone? There he is. Okay, never mind. My bad.
I think I know which delinquent student you're talking about.
I neither confirm nor deny. Can't meet this morning. Talk this afternoon, question mark? All right, I've done my duty, so to speak. Good morning, Roberts, both of you. Hey, Randy. So Randy, did you actually pass on my message or not?
Of course I did.
I'd kind of be afraid.
Well, a little bit. I made it nicer. How about
Okay,
that?
good,
You know,
good.
a little less nanny boo boo. You know.
So, hello, Marco. Dan and Deborah. Do you realize you're sitting next to each other on my computer? Probably didn't think of that.
I'm next to you on my computer.
Oh, well, my treat. Hello, Brooks. Do you know Robert?
Yes.
Good, because you're next to him on my computer.
Which Robert?
Wells.
Yes, I do know him.
I thought you might. Hello, Christine. Hello, Colin. Colin, you made me laugh with your submission. I wanted to say, wait, aren't you the expert on that?
I'm the expert on nothing.
Something about writing online or something. Hey,
No,
Bruce.
I'm just old enough to be pre-internet in my high school days. so-
Really? That's
Yeah.
exciting.
Yeah. It's a wonderful, magical time to grow up.
I bet. Bruce, how is it in France at this hour?
Oh, suffering as always. It's difficult with all this good food and wine. I mean,
Shannon is having a hard time keeping a straight face.
good. It's a sign of sanity.
And the company is excellent as well, I understand.
It is, indeed.
Hi, Nora. Hello, Jerry. Who else? Will is here. April is here. Mindy is here. Mindy, you know, the more I interact with you, the more I wonder why I don't know you better.
It's because I'm hiding over in Mercer all the time.
I'm teaching an FSEM that sounds, while the subject is very different, it sounds very similar to yours. And for the first 10 years of its existence, I taught our Introduction to Research Methods course, which may mean nothing to you, Judith, but that's okay. Natalie, welcome in the flesh.
Hi, glad to be joining. Sorry I missed last week.
Oh, don't apologize. We're just glad to have you, always.
Yeah, nice to see you all.
You know, as I like to tell my students, I work on commission. So when you show up, it means something to me.
Right.
Hello, Marjorie. Who else? Alex. Claudine, you got to get out more. You're still at that dam.
Tell me about it.
Hi, Elizabeth. Hey, I really enjoyed Monday night, probably more than you did.
Thank you.
Steve, are you ready for tomorrow? Or is that still, no, today rather. That's still, it's coming, right?
Yeah. Rosalind and I are talking about the elections today for that COVID course.
Which elections are we having?
Well, there are a few, Senate,
Okay.
presidential, all of that.
Got it. Hello, Victoria. I'm glad you're here. I'm gonna need you to correct me.
Oh,
at
no.
one point today.
Nope. You are on your own, friend.
But what if I say something that violates all the rules?
What happens in faculty learning community stays in faculty learning
Okay,
community?
fair enough.
Okay.
You can correct it next week.
Okay.
Hello, Ben. Hello, Al. And what a cute picture of Kashef when he was 14. Come on, Kashef, isn't that gonna say anything, cause anything? Hello, Marie. Well, it is 5 minutes after the hour, and I hope everybody is here who's gonna be here. So, oh, there's a chat. Alan, I am here. Yes, awesome. Glad to see that. So we are a total of 34 people at the moment. That's excellent. Good morning and welcome to meeting 2 of our faculty learning community. Let me find my PowerPoint if I am able to do that. Share screen, no. Share screen. Let's try that one. Is that gonna do it? I don't know. I don't think so. I think, all right, let's try again. You know, when you have so many screens open as I do, it is super easy to lose them. All right. Here we go. That's what I'm looking for. All right. And let's go back to the beginning. Come on now. And present. All right. Strangely enough, I'm not a PowerPoint guy. You probably figured that out already. But sometimes I find that it works well online. The theme for our day is, for our meeting today is course design and learning activities. So just kind of file that away. We will get back to that. What I like to do at the beginning of my sessions is talk a little bit about what's happened since last class. So first, let me report on the survey that you guys did. A majority of you liked this time as a meeting time. So we're gonna generally continue with that. But in second place was Tuesday afternoons. And so we will try to schedule some Tuesday meetings when it seems to make sense for us. So that's what the results looked like. Next. Okay. Whoopsie, sorry. Trying to, well, isn't that interesting? Okay, I can do this the hard way. I don't know why it's not letting me do that. Oh, did I actually, absolutely, did I destroy that? That wouldn't be good. Oh, there we go. Okay. Sometimes I think it would be helpful to have maybe 4 hands. All right. The assignment that you guys turned in and are still turning in, the last one I received, I think about 15 minutes ago. And that's fine. First of all, thank you for doing this exercise. Thank you for sharing your ideas with me. I've learned a tremendous amount about how you each approach teaching just from what you wrote on this assignment. So I put your submissions into the spreadsheet, question 1, question 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm showing you this because you're going to have the opportunity to go back and look later. Great ideas. I'm starting to see common themes here, common questions that you all are having. And so this is going to enable us to put together sort of a syllabus for the rest of the summer that I hope to share with you guys soon. All right. If you haven't had a chance to submit your assignment, it is not too late. It is never too late. Just email it to me and I will add it to the spreadsheet. Okay, let's shift back to, will this actually work? Do you see the PowerPoint? Yes, no?
Yes, we can.
Oh, awesome.
Yep, it's full screen.
Yes, good. Okay, so one of the things I did this week is, now why can't I just click on that? That should be able to do that. Okay. One of the things I did this week is I took the chat, see if I can do it this way, and I basically edited it and curated it a little bit, looked for common denominators, and I came up with this document, okay? So the characteristics that we identified: intellectual community, high degree of interaction, student agency, relevance, currency, authenticity, instructors who are passionate about their subject, instructors who care about student learning, learning as a process, failure as a path to learning success. Failure is a path to learning success. I really like that one. And this question popped into my head. Does our grading support this? Just something to think about. Community engagement, service, active learning, writing, speaking, critical thinking. And I was also reminded to point you guys back to the values of the UMW Online Learning Initiative from some years ago. I think you'll see some connections there. Anyway, this was fascinating for me. And I thought it does a really good job of describing what our courses are like. And that's going to be important as we recreate our courses this summer for next year. Okay. Let's go back to the PowerPoint because it's so much fun. Right. Now, I was struck by this is an article by, let's see, I really need to give them credit for this. So let's jump out of here for a moment. Gosh, didn't mean to go that far. Okay, yeah. Stephanie Moore from the University of Virginia and Phil Hill. If you don't know Phil Hill, he is an outside expert on educational technology, and he writes a widely followed newsletter. And that's where this article was published. So they are responding. This article came out this week. A week ago, there was an article published in Inside Higher Ed. And I noticed there's a similar article today that I haven't read yet that said, look, folks, we need to admit that online learning is not as good as face-to-face and never will be. Okay, so they're responding to that article. And what they said they pointed out, first of all, they said that's factually not true. There are hundreds of studies on the efficacy of online courses relative to face-to-face courses, and that's where the quote comes in. What we have learned from such a large research effort is that, gosh, sorry, my computer, is that no one medium is better than another, because it's not the medium itself that accounts for differences. What makes a difference is the design, specifically the application of an intentional instructional design process and the implementation of effective instructional methods or strategies. Okay, the design process and effective instructional methods and strategies can be employed in any medium or not. Okay, hopefully we will all agree with that by the end of next year. Now, I am glad Victoria's here. I am about to teach without a license, and I will count on her to keep me honest. I will try not to go too far off the path.
Good luck with that, Victoria.
Yeah, exactly. So I began teaching online in 2012. Before that, I never thought much explicitly about course design. I put my syllabus together based on the textbook and my understanding of the course content for each of my courses. I met my classes 3 times a week. Class sessions were a combination of Socratic lecture, and over time I added more active learning activities. But ultimately, my courses were organized around the class sessions. So this raises 2 questions for me. First, how does one organize a course without class sessions? Second, what is the role of the instructor in an online course? I need to tell you a story here. In 2012, I went to the 2nd annual put on by the American Economic Association. This was a really new thing. And the conference was totally different from our national meetings, okay? What was different about it is, well, everybody there seemed to want to learn from everybody else. It was just a great feel to the conference. So because at that point I was preparing to teach an online course for the first time, I saw on the schedule that there was a course, a session on online learning. So I made a point of going to it. And I heard an incredible story. There was a professor from an R1 university, I will not name them, and he was talking about how awesome online teaching and learning was. Here's what he said. I have over 100 students in my class. They get the text through the learning management system. At the end of every chapter, they take a quiz through the learning management system. The exams are through the learning management system. I don't even have to interact with students at all. And then he said, teaching doesn't get more efficient than this. And I was appalled. I didn't know what the right answer was, but I knew that was not it. Okay, so I don't think the most important role of the instructor is delivering content. I dislike the phrase delivering content because it seems to imply a passive role for students, as if we deliver learning to their brains. If only we could do that, okay? While we can curate and help interpret content, students are able to learn a great deal of the content on their own. That's not our comparative advantage. And even if we did deliver the content, that doesn't mean they're gonna learn it. In my view, The role of the teacher, the primary role of the teacher, and this is even more important online, is to create a learning environment that helps, that makes students learn. If they do what you ask, they almost can't help learning if you have a really good course design. That's my opinion. So my question, again for myself, is how do I get my students from where they start on the first day of class to where I want them to be at the end of the course, especially when there are no class sessions? Okay, so I lost it again. That's all right. Let me bring it back. Okay, can you see that? Can you see the slide? I'm gonna assume no. So that's
we can't see it. I think you need to share the screen again.
Yeah, again. All right. View. Okay. So the question is, how do I get my students from where they start the first day of class to where I want them to be at the end? The answer I came up with was designing a set of learning activities using the best of what digital tools can offer. So instead of assuming that learning occurs magically in the classroom, I decided that learning occurs through the hard work of doing learning activities. We know that learning science suggests that learning happens best when students interact with the content, with other students, and with the instructor. Last week, I mentioned the doer effect, that when students work with the content, they learn on average 6 times as much as when they read about it in a book or hear about it in a lecture. Okay, so for me, learning activities are activities that force students to do this interaction. Okay, so I want to warn you, I've always been impaired with graphics or other design features, but here we go. Okay, here is my little map. Start here, learning activity, learning activity, learning activity, learning outcomes. Okay, now, I often use the metaphor of an online course as a journey, where the content provides the narrative around the stops, which are the learning activities. You know, it's not a race, it's more like a caravan. Maybe each of these learning activities is an oasis where we spend the night or something like that. It's not a race, it's not a competition. The common goal is to get everyone successfully to the end. Okay, that's the way I think about this. All right. Now I am done talking for a while. What we're going to do is an exercise, a group exercise. Take a moment to read what we're doing here. With your Zoom meeting invite, I included a link to this assignment, this activity, so you'll be able to have access to it when we mess up the screen here. All right. Okay, Anand, let's make you the leader. How do we do that?
All right, go over to the participants list. If you haven't opened that up, open that up. And this will be a good way for us also to show you a little of the bit of the functionality that I've been ham-fistedly working through with the COVID class using breakout rooms. And this is something that I tried to read a lot about on Zoom, and I found it didn't work exactly the way they said, and some functionality didn't work at all, so we're doing different things. But what Steve asked me to do is set up great breakout rooms for all of you, and I'm gonna record it, so that way I can show you exactly what I did, because I found that was easier when Keith and Betsy and I were working through this. So let me, Steve, go ahead and make me the host. If you
Okay,
go to the
so
list of
in the
participants and then
list, in the participants list, go to, I went to Anand's name, and then over on the right-hand side, there's a button that says More. And when you click on the button, there's a drop-down menu, and one of the options is Make Host. And I have now changed the host to Anand.
Excellent, good. So right now I'm gonna make sure I'm recording the screen. Great. Sorry, I'll give you just a second. I want to make sure it's actually recording the screen. Okay, good. So this way I can show you what it looks like a little bit later. So now I'm the host, and what I'll see at the bottom is that there's a button, and it will, even if you have co-host, it won't show up for the co-host. This button at the bottom for breakout rooms only shows up for the person that's the primary host. Steve, how many groups would you like, and how many people per group is probably the way to think of it, since we have 34,
Probably
really 32 people
per group.
How many? 3 people?
3. Yeah.
Okay, good. So let's set up.
That would leave you out then, right?
Yeah, so we'll set up 11 groups. So when I click on this, I see you can try to pre-assign students. And this is what happened before that we were trying with the COVID class. The pre-assigned students to the rooms is supposed to allow me to submit a spreadsheet, and that's what I tried before. And you submit a spreadsheet, you say which students in which room, which faculty leader in which room, and then when we tried it, only about a half of the people did it work for. And I think part of it was that you have to have a Zoom account linked to it. And I told the students a number of times, have a Zoom account. Many of them never bothered to create a Zoom account. And so then I had 110 people that were in a group that I had to manually assign, and that just didn't work. Now the workaround for this, I've heard rumors, and I'm not asking anybody in the group here to confirm this, but I've heard that the UMW is working on an enterprise license. And if that does work out, that means that faculty, staff, and students will have Zoom accounts automatically with single login. If that's the case, then I'm planning on using pre-assigned groups, because that means they will already have those accounts. It'll be very easy for us to set that up. So this isn't set up yet. I'm not saying that's going to happen. If it doesn't happen, we still have free accounts. And this workaround that we're using for the COVID class works pretty well. We just automatically assign people to the room, and you'll see this on the video after it's done. So I set up how many rooms. Yes, please go ahead.
I can confirm that.
Hey, all right, good, Jerry. That's great. I didn't want to put you on the spot, Jerry.
No, it is in progress, though. I don't know when it will all be available, but it's in progress.
That is fantastic. Yeah, I was in the technology subgroup that Jerry's leading for the task force, and he brought that news to us, and I was elated. Great work. Thank you so much for Jerry and everybody else that was working on that. That is going to be a tremendous tool for all of us. So if it's available by the fall, we're going to be in great shape. That's going to give us a lot of functionality, and that means the students have a lot of that functionality too. I think that's also going to help address some of the security concerns that many of us have about Zoom, or we had before. I've been much happier with it now with some of the updates. You know, they went through, I don't know if you noticed, but at the end of May, they required everybody to update to a new software plug. And I think that addressed a lot of the security concerns too. And I really haven't had any problems with it since then. And it seems to work better. Okay, so that's great news. So in the future, you'll be able to pre-assign groups, but even on the fly, if you want to do it automatically, it works this way. And you'll see that there's, when I click on breakout rooms, there's a little dialog box that comes up, and it says assign 33 participants to, and then you can set the number of rooms. I think you can set up to like 20. I'm going to set up 10 groups, and then I'm going to click on a button that says create breakout rooms. And what'll happen is it takes just a little bit of time. You will each then get either just moved automatically. It depends on how this was set up for the meeting. You can set it so they're moved automatically, or the participants have a little dialog box that says, okay, I'll join that room. A couple of things about this that I want to make sure that you're all aware of. When you're running breakout rooms, as the person, as the host, you can then open up this breakout room separate box. It kind of hovers the way the group chat box will hover, or participants could within a webinar. And then you can see who's in each room, and you can always move people. It's pretty easy to do that. If you just play around with it, you'll see it's pretty easy to hover over a name. You'll see move to, and you can move them to different rooms. You can also join any of the rooms as the host to check in on different groups. And that's a great way to kind of check in, see how things are going. Sometimes we've had discussion groups that keep going. So I'll go join the group and see what's going on. And usually it's students showing pictures of their pets or sharing email addresses, that kind of stuff. The other thing that you can do is that in that same dialog box, there's a broadcast message function so that you as the host can send a message to everybody in all of those breakout rooms instead of having to do the chat. And then it shows up on their screen. So if you want to say, hey, 5 minutes left, then you can post that and that's available. You also have the chat function. And one thing I always tell the students is to make sure that if you have a problem in the group, you're missing somebody, there's a technical issue, send me a chat and then I can come into your breakout room and I can try to fix it. So those are all functions that we'll have here. Steve, you wanted to give about 20 minutes, you said, for the groups to work? Okay, that's great. So I'm going to send you into the breakout rooms. I think Steve, I'll just assign Steve to a room, but maybe he can kind of bop around and go back and forth and we can move him as he needs to. When you're in a breakout room, the last thing I would note is that if you say hit the leave button, it gives you the option of two things, leave the breakout room or leave the meeting entirely. And you want to leave just the breakout room and come back to this group. And that's another way you can always contact the host. You can have them come back to here and then I can send you back into that room, I believe. So let's go ahead and I'm going to click on create breakout rooms. You'll go into those rooms. We'll send a broadcast message when we get close to 20 minutes to let you know that we're running out of time. All right, here we go.
We made it.
How did we end up with you, Steve?
I know.
It's totally random. You heard Anand.
I think we're being supervised. We obviously weren't
Yeah.
trusted to do this on our own.
Well, in your case, that's probably legit.
Exactly.
Mm.
Well, let's get into the assignment. In case you've forgotten, it says each of us should share one idea for a learning activity that they are considering using in their course. Discuss the ideas in the group, connecting each with one or more of the characteristics of a compelling course. Select one learning activity to bring back to the class. Choose a reporter, someone other than the person who offered the activity. So who would like to go first? Oh, there's a broadcast message. That looked pretty good. Okay.
I can go first.
Thank you, Nora.
All right, so I'm thinking about this learning activity not only for my intro social class, which I submitted as a part of the assignment, but also my FSAM, which is having students conduct interviews as part of practicing interview skills, data collection skills, and analyzing the data set. And I'm thinking about having them videotaping them as interviewer for like first 3 or 5 minutes and upload it. And so they do interviews and then they analyze their interviews, and that would be their like full assignments. My concern with that activity is that I don't want to have them do face-to-face interviews given the situation. So I don't know if that idea of having them interviews and analyzing the interview data will be useful. That's something that I'm still thinking about it. Or do I need to come up with something entirely different assignments that they can do like at the safety of their home or dorm or something?
One quick question, Nora.
Yeah.
The question is, which of the characteristics of the compelling courses?
I guess it's more like engagement.
Yes, I can see that.
Yeah, so I want them to be engaging instead of like reading about the benefits of interview method, in-depth interviews, and some problems with in-depth interviews, and then also research ethics.
Sure.
You know, they will read about it, but I want them to have the actual experience with those as active engagement.
There's also agency. You're putting the school
Yeah,
in charge.
but I don't know if it's a good idea given the pandemic situation.
There a reason why the interviews would have to be done face to face?
What?
Because there's lots of ways to do interviews. My entire graduate research was done with interviews.
Yes, so that's the thing. So, you know, I have lots of interviews as a researcher, experience with the interviews, and then it's awkward to have face-to-face interviews, but it's better. And then I'm assuming them for most of them, it would be their first research interviews, right? And I don't know if it would be a good idea to have them for their first interviews as via like Zoom or Skype. And how awkward would that be? And in terms of also recruiting, would it be also a problem? Mm. Yeah. Okay.
They're all different, right? Like my graduate work was mostly interviews done by phone, and part of that was when I was in grad school, and we were working with people who were at a distance because it was a longitudinal sample, so we were calling them. But when we were training our undergraduate RAs, we were having to train them not just to do the interviews, but to do interviews without relying on body language because they're doing this over the phone. So they've got some of the nonverbal in terms of tone of voice or rate of speech, but they can't rely on a look to show confusion. So it was teaching them different skills there, as well as how to get things across. When I was teaching in-person interviewing, I was focusing more on physical comfort and that kind of connection and issues of dominance hierarchy in terms of how you use your body and things like that. So it was a different set of skills, but the reality of the current world is that we probably are doing interviews over Zoom. So it might just be a case of giving them some context for the fact that it could be different in different ways, and that as researchers using a tool, we have to adapt.
Yeah. Right. So I'm like almost convinced that I'm gonna do the assignment.
I'll go next. One of the things that I am going to do for the first time in my FSEM is about a third to a half, probably about a third of the way through the semester. I haven't totally done my calendar yet. I'm going to take 1, maybe 2 days and have the class brainstorm together about what we will cover for the second half of the semester. So my FSEM is about feminism in the 21st century. It's a very, very broad title so that there's a lot of flexibility in the course so that it can be adapted. And I start with some background on what feminism is and different approaches, and that there's not one feminism, there's many feminisms, and that it changes over time, and that there's still a need for it because depending on who's enrolled in the class, I may have a group that already buys in, or I might have a group I have to convince that feminism's not done. But every time I've taught the course, I've found that regardless of what I had planned for what we would cover, the class always adapts it to their own interests and what they see as key topics in the world as connected to feminism. And their view of that is often different than mine. On average, they're 18 years old. I'm currently 43. I see the world in a different way than they do. So this time I'm gonna lean into that. And so I'm going to take time to have them as a group collectively brainstorm about what are key issues that feminism should be addressing in their mind. And we'll come up with a much bigger list than we can cover. And then from that, we will work collaboratively with me facilitating the discussion, but not making decisions, to narrow that down to probably 5 topics. And then from those 5 topics, students will work in small groups to pick readings for one of those topics and facilitate discussion of it. And then their project, which will be around advocating for particular action or activism, will center on that topic. So when I think about a learning activity, I'm at this moment thinking about that brainstorming portion and narrowing it down, where they're actively engaged with the ideas, where they are driving the direction of the course, where they are seeing that there's not one inherently best path, but that there are many possible avenues for exploration, and that we can't possibly cover all of them, and that we'll have some disappointment that our learning experience can't cover everything, and that that's okay. And so I am trying to figure out how that would work if we were in person, but physically spaced very far apart, or if we were online, where the discussion is a little different. But that is something that I am excited about doing for the first time in this class. And I think it will get the students involved in a deeper way earlier in the semester, where I've generally found that coming up later than I would like. So my goal has been to get them actively engaged a little bit sooner.
Does that mean I'm the next victim?
I think it does.
I wrote to Steve to say, basically, I hadn't a clue what to do with these courses because I wasn't here in the spring. I'm on sabbatical, and I just watched it all from a distance and cheered you all on. But it means I don't see the problems, and so anything I come up with could be catastrophic. So what I was thinking of, just when I saw what we were asked to describe, I was thinking of a project that the students came up with on their own the last time I taught it. My freshman seminars on the early Crusades. It's a pretty intensive drop into the primary source material by Jews, Christians, and Muslims from the Crusade period. And it tends to be in print, and it's abstract. And I asked the students to look at the material from different perspectives, to understand the perspectives, to analyze the sources for quality, for truth. There's a lot of forgery that happens then. And what I did at the end of the semester was I told the students, invent an assignment. What do you think would be something that culminates your experience with the materials? And they came up with wonderful ideas. Animated videos of certain events in the Crusade, very kind of grim events, but actually strangely memorable by the illustrations. Documents, some creative writing, but also the one I thought might work as a class assignment. I just have no idea if this would be doable. Some of the students came up with these sort of, what do you call them, an intellectual map of the source material, evidence, and events from the perspectives of the various participants. And so they, sometimes there was ginormous maps that a small group would contribute to, because they got to do it on their own or form groups, to whatever suited them. And I looked at what the students had done. I thought, this is actually really useful. It's the kind of thing that we could do all the way along the semester, where what they're doing is collaboratively creating a mental map, an intellectual map, a social map, cultural map of the period of the early Crusades. They have to select the things that go on the map, which means they have to be able to weigh evidence and understand what's important and what's not. Visually, most of them did probably what we all did in grade school. They got out pencils and pens and different colors, and no one doing the maps actually did anything more sophisticated. So I don't know. It just strikes me as something that might keep them unified as a group. I'm a little worried about that because so much of the group dynamic was 15 students sitting around 2 days a week with a lot of discussion. And we're not going to have that. So
you can have that. That depends on what you do. I mean, I spent an hour last week talking to April. Like, I asked April for a meeting, and because I feel a lot of anxiety about the unknowns of the fall anyway. I'm not a good person with unknowns. but I feel a lot of anxiety around my FSEM because it's not just my class, it's serving these broader goals, and it has learning goals related to the content, but it also has broader goals related to the first year experience program. And so I spent a lot of time talking with her. And if I do end up moving the course online, which is an unknown right now, I think it's likely, but it's not a certainty. I definitely view it as a synchronous rather than an asynchronous course, where I typically teach my FSEM 3 days a week. I like the 3 short meetings, where at least 2 days a week we would be meeting in real time, maybe all 3. And so that we would still have that collective discussion, I hope. It would function a little differently. But for your mental map project, the thing that immediately occurred to me is that the online tools could actually allow for collaboration in a more active way than if you were in person and students were working alone and then coming together, right? They could have a shared, maybe not a Google, maybe it would be like a Google presentation form where they're building the mental map out, but where they're leaving each other comments and going, I don't think this should be here. I think this should be what we're focusing on instead, or I don't think this captures the right idea. And then that's leading into discussion either in real-time meetings or through asynchronous means. I think that the online tools could actually potentially allow for some really interesting collaboration there. I think that's actually really exciting.
Those are great ideas. Thanks. And is April the person to go to then for help with that, or?
April's the director of the first year experience. So,
okay. So maybe, okay. More on the tech side.
But for the how, yeah, I would say that's the, what are they calling, what was DTLT that now has a new name?
Support.
That, digital learning support.
Talk to Shannon and Jerry. They can help.
All right, good.
Okay, we have 5 more minutes. If we had more time, I would tell you what my idea is. But we don't. So which of these 3 excellent ideas do we want to report back to the group?
I nominate Bruce's idea because it's an online collective mapping or sort of a course blog is something.
Yeah,
that
I like that too.
About it. So I want to know, like, if it's a good idea, what are some things that I need to be thinking about, and then technical stuff as well.
Yeah, I agree. I was thinking that Bruce's is a really good one because it's taking something that was done in a different format, in a face-to-face course in a prior iteration, and trying to leverage some of the unique qualities that could be offered through online tools. Even if it was still a face-to-face class, the assignment could be done through online collaboration. And so I think that could be a really interesting set of talking points.
And sometimes face-to-face activities work well online and other times they don't. I really think this one would work well. Now, Bruce, the advantage of us choosing your activity is that you get the credit.
I don't have to describe it.
You get the credit, but you don't have to report back. So who would like to report back on Bruce's idea to the overall group?
I can do it. I was note-taking.
Good. I thought you might. Well, we do have 3 minutes, so let me just kind of sketch out what I'm going to do. What I'm doing is for my FSEM also. Are you guys familiar with Hypothesis, the app?
Oh, app. Oh.
Vaguely.
Okay,
like I know it exists.
It's basically a template that fits over the top of any web document. It can be a PDF or anything. And it allows anyone in the class to annotate the document and for everyone to see everyone else's annotations. So I thought this might be useful in an FSEM to help students get through more difficult documents, materials. And also as it would also provide a separate kind of discussion channel in the class, especially if it's an online class. I've used I've used Hypothesis before in upper level classes, but never in first year classes. But I don't think there's any reason why they couldn't do it equally well. So that's my plan. It's kind of magical, actually. I still don't really understand how it works. So anyway, and you're not, so it's funny, you're not, from what I understand, you're not marking up the actual document. It's like an overlay, and no one can see the comments if they're not in the group. So, all right, well, I think we are ready to go back to the room, to the big room. So let's do it. This was a really nice conversation. One thing that struck me, and Bruce probably disagrees at this point still, but small groups in Zoom, I think, work really well because more than a group of 50, say. So anyway.
That's
all right.
great. This is all new to me, so.
I know.
Same here. I was off last semester, so.
Oh,
I
wow.
experimented a lot with different ways of meeting on Zoom, in part pushed by students, because I had students facilitating classes in the latter half of the semester, and I had to find a way to make that work. So they wanted to try stuff. So I was like, okay, I'll turn on breakout groups. Let's see. If it fails, we'll just try something new. But I really like the small groups.
Nice. All right. See you shortly.
All right.
Anand.
Hey, how's it going, Steve? I was
Hey,
just working on the video.
You put me in an awesome group.
I did that on purpose with the automatically assigned breakout.
Yes. And at least one person in my group claimed that the fix was in. But I said, no, it's totally out of my hands. And
Hey, should I tell
won't
everybody
tell
else
you,
to wrap it up?
I won't tell you his name.
Too bad I know who was in that group, and there was only one other male, so I guess I could figure that out. Should I send everybody a message to wrap it up?
Yes. We could have gone on, but we decided to play by the rules, which will shock everyone. Bob, I love that picture of yours. It looks very comfortable kicking back in your recliner. Hey, Elizabeth.
Yes.
So do you have your children chained and muzzled in the basement or something?
So, no, they have been with grandparents so that I could, I was having trouble starting my rough draft for my rationale for tenure promotion. So I called the in-laws begging for help, and they took the kids, and they've been gone since Saturday. They're on their way back now.
I've always found that that's maybe the best thing about in-laws.
It's awesome, yeah. And they're much lower risk than my parents are, so I haven't been comfortable asking my parents to take the kids, just because it doesn't seem like a safe idea for my parents. But Josh's parents, we were honest about who we may have come in contact with, and they seemed okay with it. So
that's awesome.
Yeah,
that's great.
They'll be home in a couple of hours, and then next week it's very likely that they will be here and causing a
nice. There were 10. So I was just editing the video of the screen capture that I made. There are a couple of interesting things we learned from it. I joined a couple of groups. People asked the host to join in to answer questions. One of them, a technical thing that I did not have access to, I went in and you have some limited functionality. I think in a regular meeting, like right now, I could help you with muting or unmuting, and I cannot do that within breakout rooms. That is taken away. The other thing about it is the chat box when you're in a breakout room is limited to just people in your breakout room. Now, I believe you have that function to contact the host if there's a problem, but you can't send something like, I couldn't send a message out via chat to everybody. The only way I can contact everybody is the breakout room broadcast message.
That's correct. When you're in chat, when you're in breakout groups, your chat is only the breakout group. And then while in a breakout group, you can send a direct message to the host of the meeting, and the host of the meeting can send broadcast messages. So it changes the functionality.
Yep. What, Steve? Mindy, do you want to speak to that? Because I haven't actually done that from in a breakout room.
I'm not looking at the screen right now, so I'm not going to know the exact button, but there's an option at the bottom of the Zoom screen. It might be under the More button where it says like message host or contact host.
There was,
so
there was a button that I used for Alan to get him to come. It said ask for help. And it,
okay, cool.
That's what it is, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So what was great is I had a screen capture of the whole thing. And so I guess I should have asked you all permission to include you on my screen capture video, but I did. And what was great was when I then got that from Jerry, I show you, you can see exactly what it looked like to me as a host. And that I click on the button and then I join the group and I can participate in the group. And then I was able to go back. I got another message then from Randy, I think, to join another group. And I went and joined that group and answered a couple questions. And then I was able to leave and just go back to the general meeting. So it's a really great tool to be able to, I haven't done this with a class, a regular size class yet, but I'm looking forward to using this for class discussion and breakout groups. And Elizabeth, for something like small group communication, I think it'll be perfect.
I used it in the spring in one of my classes, and we would sometimes break out in the middle of a class for a brief period of time, and it was when I had students actually facilitating the class. So I would usually set it up where I would randomly assign to groups, but then I would move the two student leaders into their own group. So while the rest of the class had the opportunity to work on the activity they were being given, it gave the class leaders a chance to kind of caucus and figure out where they were going next. So it's pretty easy to move people around. And that was a class of 20, and I generally had about 18 of them there at a time. So it's pretty easy to do as long as your class is not huge to then adjust groups. And once you set groups, like if you're using them multiple times in a class period, once you set groups at the beginning, it'll keep those same groups if you want them throughout that meeting. So that's nice if you want them to like go into a group and then come out and then go back.
That's awesome. So there's one group I think that's still meeting. Should I just close all rooms and make them come back? I think they're coming back now.
I think we're back. Sorry.
That's okay. Yeah,
Alex,
when you do that,
I figured it would
close
be
all.
you.
If you say click all rooms, then it says they have 60 seconds, so they get a little bit of time countdown.
So, what did you think of the small groups? Did you think it worked well?
I mean, I liked our group. I thought we covered a lot of issues. I'm not sure that we covered what you wanted us to cover, but we covered a lot of ideas about using Canvas, using Zoom, what would make an effective class for the students, how we might start the semester strongly. I mean, we covered a lot of different things, which was great. And everybody had done different things, so we got a lot of different ideas.
Well, let's move into the reporting out part. Who would like to go first?
I can go first, Steve, if you'd like.
Sure.
In my group was Dan Hubbard and Shannon. And Shannon asked me what I had been working on. And I'm planning to address my ethics class that I teach in the spring. That's what I was teaching when this event occurred. And I sort of switched sort of online, but I realized that the engagement wasn't there that I needed. So I had seen this TED Talk on using Dungeons and Dragons to teach ethics. And I wanted to create a virtual community environment that would allow the students to actually experience the results of their ethical decision making. So my original thought was to have them each create a set of environments based on some typical parameters I would give them all. And then I would inject things like a pandemic. and then make their decision-making process, and then have them sort of discuss this in the little group activities, and then come back and sort of argue from each of the different ethical perspectives. But then Dan came up with a really interesting idea. He said, why don't you make a pandemic dorm, a virtual dorm room, since they probably won't be on campus this fall. And we could call it Panda Dormium. And in the Panda Dormium, we would assign each of the students a roommate, and then we would go through different perspectives of situations that would be in dorm life or in virtual dorm life, like internet's cutting out and things associated with information technology, and have them sort of come back with responses on how they would do it, and then have them sort of chat on each of them. The other thing that we discussed was maybe create alternate historical fictions where, like the Confederacy winning the Civil War, et cetera, and then have them argue from different perspectives, assign each of them, you've got a Kantian point of view, you've got a utilitarian point of view, et cetera, and have them come back and sort of discuss the decision-making processes that they would make based on events as we go through. So that's pretty much what we discussed. Dan, Shannon, did you want to add anything? My partners are silent.
Okay, that's fine. That was good. Al, don't forget to send me a brief email summary of what you came up with.
I actually took notes.
Awesome, even better. All right, who'd like to go next?
I'm happy to.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
So I was with Robert and Robert, and so we talked, I don't know that we got into quite the same details, but we talked about each of our courses and what we wanted to work on. So we went through each of those and some of the challenges with our learning goals, and balancing asynchronous and synchronous learning for those of us that wanted to do either hybrid or, I guess any of us would be doing either hybrid or online courses in the fall. So anyway, I'll talk about Robert Wells's. So he is teaching a course in the fall on Beethoven, and it's a new class, and seems like it will be in hybrid format. And one of the main challenges that he was talking about is thinking about how to get students motivated to listen and engage with the material and music. So we talked about potentially some small group work that might be synchronous, but also we were concerned about students that may not have the capabilities to do a lot of that synchronously. So what could be some of the ways to work around that? And one of the things we talked about was potentially using, he said most of the scores are in PDF formats, so potentially doing like shared annotations that may not require the same kind of bandwidth for students that doing synchronous Zoom classes, listening and talking through those kinds of things might require. So, kind of using the same system that we would for annotating scholarly works or something like that, and doing it for the music itself, and then sharing that could be a way to engage the students and motivate them, and also have some motivation to keep each other going too, if they kind of have to report to each other.
Thank you. Who's next?
I can go next, Steve.
Great.
So I was in a group with Steve, Nora, and Bruce, and we decided to talk about Bruce's activity. So this is an activity he's used in the past, and it actually came from students when they were asked to create an assignment for the FSEM, which is about the Crusades. And it's having students create a mental map of the source material from the different perspectives that are being reflected in the course. And he talked about the value of having them work to do this collaboratively, where they need to decide what's on the map, weigh the evidence, talk about conflicts, etc. And he talked about how in the past they've done this. as kind of an arts and craft project, right? Markers, different colors, drawing pictures. And he was grappling with how to move this into an online format, given that he didn't teach online at all in the spring since he's been on sabbatical. And we talked about the fact that the online environment might actually allow for some interesting opportunities to allow further collaboration on that, where it could be a shared map creation, let's say in a Google presentation document, where students are adding things to it and potentially leaving each other notes where they're making suggestions or challenging each other's placements or prioritizations. And that's something that could be more easily done in an asynchronous online environment than might be the case with people doing their own physical maps and then trying to share those ideas to create a larger one.
Thank you, Mindy. Who's
I can
next?
go next if it's all right.
Okay, Natalie.
So I was in a group with Marco and Randy, and it sounds like a lot of groups. We talked about a lot of different issues that we were anticipating coming up in the fall, but we decided to go with what Randy was talking about in terms of a learning activity. He's, as I understand it, going to be teaching Gen Chem with over 100 students. So the idea is, how do we get them to, talk to each other and do more than just, here's the content of the course, learn it. And so we talked about maybe doing these breakout groups, like we just did. So we were very interested in how the breakout groups of the Zoom works. But then I think one of the issues he brought up is, well, how do we make sure that when the students are in those breakout groups that they actually do talk about the assignment and do the problem that he gives them, as opposed to, just talking about whatever they watched last night, etc. So it's nice in terms of getting the small group and feeling a little bit more of a community in a class that's that size, and actually speaking with and learning people's names. But then the challenge is, well, how do we make sure that what they're doing in that small group is what, I'm hoping that they'll do, at least most of the time.
Thank you.
I'll go.
Awesome, Dave.
Yeah, so I was in a group with Ben, Kate, and Victoria. And each of us, we kind of went around, we talked about some of the challenges that we've had with teaching our courses in the online environment. And then we also talked about some of the things that we think that really want to make students come to class. And one of the things that we were thinking about is it's so fun to come to class a few minutes beforehand and just listen to the students talk to each other, talk to their friends. And I think we all thought that that was so important to try to replicate as much as possible in an online environment, especially for the freshmen. Because I just think that's such an important part of the college experience. And that to what we all thought was, that was a big reason that you have students come to class. It's not always to listen to the professor, but it's also to be with your friends and catch up with your friends and learn together. So we kind of thought about, well, how can we try to replicate that sense of community as much as possible? And we were thinking maybe on the first day of class doing some breakout sessions, just like what we've done here. And for my accounting class, for example, I could say, introduce yourself, where are you from, what's your name, some of those background questions, but then I could have a framing question as define accounting. And some students have taken it in high school, and so they could then report back to the group similar to what we're doing here. Another thing that we thought that would be useful is, this is what happened to me when I was teaching my class in the spring, is we were on chat in the conference session, and some students were like, hey, Professor H, are you watching any TV shows now during the quarantine? Or what's your favorite food? So I started to do some quizzes on Canvas, some just fun quizzes like that, and then say, hey, come to the next conference session so you can hear back what everybody had to say. Nice. So trying to make it fun like that, I think, is really important. And trying to use the breakout sessions as much as possible in the small groups, we thought was really important. Victoria, Ben, Kate, do y'all have anything to add that I didn't say?
I can speak about my group. This is Judith, and I met with Pamela and Marie. And I would say that the main focus in the group was engaging the students with making relevant or meaningful activities. And Pamela had talked about ways to get them to think more deeply about the environment, and in oceanography, which is now a 100 level course. She works with case studies and trying to look at the impact on the ocean of particular events or situations or behaviors, and thinking about having groups focus on, as I said, case studies in those areas, as well, critical thinking. And I don't have much more written down about it. Pamela, do you want to pop in here, or we can move on to just talking about Marie's as well? So Marie was talking about, again, engaging students in mathematical thinking and making mathematics relevant to the students. So trying to figure out, how in their lives this is important, because quantitative literacy is lacking many times. And issues like problem solving, giving students choice in projects, providing them structure that they sometimes want very much, but also encouraging them to be more autonomous and to take ownership of projects they were working on. So once they were more advanced with those projects, they would be, really satisfied with that. And I think that as well. So those were the main things.
Thanks, Judith.
Mm-hmm.
I can go ahead and go next. I was in a group with Steve and David and Brooks. We talked a lot about scaling and the idea of figuring out how to compress or break up a large assignment that might work well in a face-to-face classroom into kind of more manageable pieces for an online class. And with Steve's class, which is on the fall elections, or involves the fall elections greatly, he's assigning students a national significance race, a race of national significance on the state level, so a gubernatorial or Senate level race. And one way that he's working with that we thought was really interesting is getting students to consider them via 5 questions, right? And so one would be, what's Trump's effect on this race? Another is, what's Black Lives Matter, what's its effects on this race? What are the economy's effects on the race? And so getting a way to get students to think about a big idea through a series of 5 smaller questions was the activity that we built with that. And it seems kind of nicely applicable to almost all the classes and the projects that we were looking at.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll go next. It was with Deborah Steckler, April Wynn, and Christine Henry. And we never quite got, as I said earlier, to a specific course, I think in large part because we got, I think, defined in some part by April's dilemma of how do you make FSIMs do what FSIMs are supposed to do, which is a critical element in all of our courses, that this community, this engagement, skill sets, all of that. And a lot of what we focused on was this element of community. And we talked about how in the spring, our classes had the advantage of already knowing each other and already knowing us. And so we could continue and build on that in different ways. But in the fall, potentially we run into the risk of starting online, who knows? And, so with that, we talked about some options that different people had kind of done, or questions. A lot of it focused on Canvas and different options on Canvas as opposed to Zoom, using Canvas conference and Canvas chat and Canvas assignments and how to give feedback and make that a place where students can engage each other as well as engage with us. And Christine had a lot of experience with Canvas before she came to Mary Washington, so she was providing us with a lot of tips and encouragement and all of that. in large part how to give feedback. But I think we ended with the idea that to do what we need to do in the fall, regardless of assignments, we need to connect with our students before the fall semester starts. And so building that community and that contact and that identification through Zoom or through Canvas in the week or so before the semester starts, which will be particularly important for first year students in one way, but continuing students to make them feel like they're kind of back, even if maybe they're not. So that's kind of our all over the place discussion.
Thanks, Claudine. Who's left?
I can go. Group with Marjorie and Will, and Will talked about one of the things that he wants to do with his first level history class is to get them to analyze primary sources. And so what we were talking about, or what his ideas were, was to get them into groups to analyze the primary sources. And he was thinking about using Google Docs to help with annotation. Because they're familiar with Google Docs, they've used Google Docs before, so it should kind of help with the learning curve. And then he would have one student report out, and he was hoping for this part to be asynchronous, so he would have one student report out on that whole process by creating a video that would be shared with the class. And so we kind of just talked through some different ideas about if you didn't want to use Google Docs, what are some other tools that you could use? And so we kind of talked through pros and cons of Slack or Zoom. And I guess then we also talked about in terms of video creation, I've seen a lot of people using Flipgrid. I don't know if anybody's used it. I haven't used it personally, but it seems like something that students enjoy using. And so we talked about Flipgrid rather than having them post to Canvas the videos. And I guess one of the points that we continue to bring up is just how many different mediums is too many mediums. And especially if they're taking 5 classes and in each class they're using Canvas and then Zoom and then Slack and then Flipgrid. And so what we were interested, I think, in learning a little bit more about is which of these tools can be easily integrated with Canvas. Like, can you download apps that will help students find this in Canvas? I know I downloaded like the Screencast-O-Matic app into my Canvas course, and that seems to be helpful. But so that's kind of one of our questions that I don't know if we necessarily have a good answer to yet, but that's what we talked about.
Guys, I think I'm next. Oh well, next, last, save the best. So I was in a group with Kashef and Jerry. Since Jerry's not teaching a class in the fall, we kind of discussed what Kashef and I were doing for our classes, and we had two basic ideas for Kashef's class. He wants to have his students in the online format work together to generate a store or think up of an idea for a store. And Jerry gave us a lot of good input on what tool you can use. He mentioned that Office 360 is going to be integrated into Canvas. So students can go in and use Microsoft products to work together and develop a storefront. And another idea that we discussed is I'm kind of revamping my FSEM, and I have a lot of goals for my FSEM. But one of my big goals is by the time they leave my FSEM, I want them to be self-sufficient advisees. I want them to go into their future advisee's office and or advisor's office and know what courses they need for their major. I want them to have already looked at the course schedule, so they're not coming in asking to take paleontology in the spring when paleontology isn't even being offered in the spring. And one of the ways I want to do that is have each student in the fall think about what they want to major in. I mean, it doesn't need to be the be-all, end-all decision, but then take that thought, go to the course catalog and actually develop a check sheet for all of the course requirements that they would need for that particular major. And so by the end of the class, they should have a check sheet that they can use throughout their college career as long as they stick with that major. And if they don't, they at least know where to go to get all this information so they can walk into their advisor's office educated. And those are our ideas. You are welcome.
Two, 3 o'clock,
3 o'clock usually. Yeah.
4:30 or 5.
Yeah.